Hey guys, welcome back to Chariot Palmistry. My name is Sulabh Jain, and in this video, we're going to be talking about the energy in the world over 2025. And it's actually looking like a really good period. There's a lot of optimistic energy, I believe, that's going to be around the world at this time. There will, however, be three challenging periods, and that's over February, April, May, and then also September. But I'll come back and talk about why those periods are challenging in just a minute. But the general theme of 2025 should be one of extreme optimism. And to explain why that's the case, let me throw up a screenshot of a video I made at the very start of this decade, which I call the 2020s cheat sheet. And from memory, I think I made it when the whole world was in lockdown during the early period of COVID. I was predicting that this whole pessimistic COVID period was going to end in 2022, but then from 2023 onwards, we'd be entering into a period of optimism. In hindsight, I think we actually ended up predicting the end of the COVID period. And since that period, over 23, 24, and now coming into 25, I believe is going to be an optimistic time where the entire markets of the world start to go up. All of 2025 is a good time. 2026 is a good time. However, there are storm clouds on the horizon at the end of 2026 and more so into 2027 and then throughout the end of the decade. I'll come back and talk about what those disasters could be in just a little while. But keep in mind, now's not the time to be afraid of what's happening in the latter months of this decade. We need to take advantage of this good period that we're in right now and into 2026. But I want to draw your attention to the bottom of that screenshot because in it, I made a series of predictions on what I thought was going to be the important energetic changes taking place throughout this decade. The first one of these predictions is I thought the housing bubble was going to continue throughout most of this decade. And we've been pretty much spot on from that. I remember during the lockdowns, everyone thought the housing market was going to crash. I was actually against the mainstream there, thinking we'd enter into a bubble. We're still in that bubble phase right now over 2024, and I think it's going to continue going up in 2025. In fact, Jupiter is transiting into Cancer in around about November of 25. What that means is Jupiter loves the house of Cancer. It's just one of its favorite places. It's stronger there, even more so than when it's in Sagittarius or Pisces. And I believe the real estate market is going to go ballistic in a good way up from about November onwards. There's a little retrograde period just after that where it'll flatline a bit, but next year, especially the end of next year, is looking amazing for real estate. So one question a lot of you people have been asking me is, should you be buying real estate or should you be looking at selling? Now remember, on this channel, I don't give financial advice. I can't tell you what you should do with your own finances. But what I believe is that there's going to be a real estate correction or a crash happening along with a bigger disaster in the world economy at the end of 2026. So use that timing to make your own decisions. But over 2025, the market is going up. My next prediction was on the crypto bubble taking place over this decade. And you'll notice I didn't actually put dates on this particular bubble because there are actually going to be several bubbles over the 2020s. The first has already burst and we're in the middle of the second bubble right now. Now, I'm not going to talk about crypto too much in this video, so I put out a video a couple weeks ago about crypto over 2025. And in it, I predicted, I've got 3 key dates on when I think the top of the crypto market's going to be. And that's the disaster months of 2025, which is February, April, and September. One of these months will be the top of Bitcoin, then the altcoin rally starts, then the bursting of the altcoin bubble too. So go check out that video. That will give you the starting point on what I think is going to happen with crypto over 2025. Now, I was also predicting a gold and silver bubble to take place too. And this is something I'm really excited to show you guys here using our Roadvi tool. So let me share the screen and show you exactly what's going on here. Now, for those of you who are new to this channel, Roadvi is a tool that we've produced. It's available online where we've automated a lot of the predictions that we make. And I want to show you this new feature that we've developed over here where we summarize the energy of a particular commodity or stock or cryptocurrency. In this case, we're looking at gold. And we call this our energy meter summary just because that's about as creative and clever as we can be here. But what I want you guys to notice is this green line over here is the price of gold, and this orange line down here is the energy of gold. And you'll notice the periods where the energy goes down, the price of gold actually goes down over that period. Whereas the time where the energy spikes upwards is a period where the gold price spikes upwards. So we can generally see if there's different planetary transits that are pushing gold up or down using this simple summary. Now, right now, this video has been recorded on the 31st of December, so we're just at this period where we don't have data coming into the future. What our tool's predicting is that the price of gold should stay up until around about the 4th of January. Then the energy of it slowly dwindles away until we get to April. Meaning the Roadvi tool is predicting a declining gold price for about the next 3 to 4 months. That's all well and good, but there's a bigger picture here that I'm going to show you guys. If I drag across the screen over 2025, what you'll notice is there's a huge ramp up with the energy of gold taking place from April and going through to about August, September time. And the energy up there, if you can see it on the screen, gets to about 8.5 as per our calculations. And that's big alarm bells. So some disaster is going to be taking place with the world generally that's going to push the price of gold up so high. And to show you exactly how significant that 8.5 energy reading is, let me go out here and I'll show you that this hasn't happened for the last few years. In fact, the last time the energy of gold got so high was back in 2020. If you recall, in that period, there were 2 lockdowns that the world went through. And as you can see, there's 2 spikes here with the energy too. With the first spike, the energy only got up to 8. And with the second spike, or the second lockdowns, the energy was also at 8 as well. But in September, it's registering an 8.5, which means there's some sort of disaster due to take place. Now, to speculate on what that disaster could be, in around about April of 2025, Ketu is going to transit into Leo. Then in August, September, the Sun is going to transit into Leo too. So let me explain what that means. Leo represents the government. And the Sun represents the king or the president, the ruler, or the center of the universe. And when it comes into its own house, it's in a strong state. It likes to feel happy there. But then Ketu comes in there, and Ketu likes to cut you off at the head, which means the energy of Ketu is either going to lead to an assassination of some sort, a coup, or a toppling of a government. Could also potentially be like a big natural disaster, as in like a big earthquake or something like that taking place too. You see, Ketu also represents cracks and therefore earthquakes. That's where I'm going with this. In either case, there's some sort of disaster brewing politically or environmentally next year, either starting in the month of April or August-September timeframe. And that's what I think is going to cause that spike in energy with gold. So I'm giving you guys a little heads up here. Pay attention to the headlines, especially politically at that time. Now, continuing on to my next prediction, which is that the stock market would be in a bubble. We're pretty much on track for that one. I really don't have much to add to this, other than to say 2025, it should be at all-time highs. But keeping in mind there's some sort of correction due to take place in Feb, April, and September too. My next prediction that there would be an AI bubble that would take place is actually one of the best predictions I made on this cheat sheet. The only funny thing about it is I thought the end of the bubble would take place towards the end of 2023. That hasn't taken place. The bubble is very much in place right now, especially if you look at stocks like Microsoft or Nvidia. I'm not going to scratch out the end date here, even though it's a little bit embarrassing. I'm just going to keep the text there more for the sake of integrity, just because I don't want you guys to think that I edit this stuff in hindsight. But the big takeaway, I suppose, is that AI will continue to grow and dominate the world over 2025. My next prediction was that India would enter into its golden age and would continue to grow and outperform the rest of the world. So let me show you how that's played out. So on the screen right now is the S&P 500, the US stock market, and I'm going to measure the growth of the US stock since the beginning of this decade and compare it to India. So let's just see if we can find the beginning of January 2020, which is around about there. We measure it all the way up to the recent top just a few weeks ago. And as you can see, the US stock market grew by about 88%. Which is a really, really good number. Generally, if it goes up about 10% every year, then that's a good year. But over a 5-year period, 88% is a fantastic return. Especially if you look at that COVID crash, which, by the way, we predicted on this channel. We also predicted the rebound. In fact, I think the rebound we got right to within a week or two of it actually happening. But that's the US, 88%, which is very good. I'm going to switch over to the Sensex right now, which is the Indian Stock Exchange, and we'll do a similar measurement. We'll find January of 2020, which is around about here, measure all the way up to the recent top. You can see that the Indian stock market is up by 108% in the same time frame. In other words, the Indian stock market has grown 20% more than the US. And that may not sound like a big deal, that it's only 20%, and that may be an outlier you guys are thinking, but consider this for a second. Since the start of this decade, the Americans have had to print $15 trillion in order to get that 88% increase in their stocks. The Indian government hasn't really been printing at all. There weren't like bailouts during COVID lockdowns, there weren't sort of social security safety nets that they were putting in place. In other words, the Indian economy has grown quicker and bigger than the Americans at a foundational level. It's the fundamental economy growing there, whereas the growth in America is happening due to money printing. So I want you guys to think about that. If this trend continues, India will eventually overtake the US, at least economically, and you can make what you want of what the consequences of that will be for the rest of the world. And my last prediction was that the commodities would generally be going up until the end of 2026. That's a bit of a scattergun result over here. Some of them are doing amazingly well, some of them not so much. My general prediction, though, is over 2025, most of them should continue to do well. But keep in mind, if there is some money printing taking place in the US, which we think will happen because that spike up in the gold energy meter that we showed you a little while ago, then that means most commodities will be going up next year, at least nominally. Whether that's in terms of value or not, we won't know that for a few years. But at least the money printing should push commodities up. And so that's, I suppose, a general big picture on what the energy of 2025 is going to be like. Let me just talk very briefly about these tricky, challenging months that we talked about before. The most challenging period over 2025 is going to happen from the middle of March through to about the middle of April. That 6 to 8 week period. At that time, there's a lot of planetary transits taking place and a really big eclipse too. So Rahu's going to transit into Aquarius, Ketu will move into Leo, Jupiter will go into Gemini, and what was the other one? Saturn. Saturn's going to move into Pisces. And as I said, there's an eclipse which will take place over 4 or 5 different planets. So it's a real milkshake of a period there. If there's a time next year where you guys should be looking at unplugging from the silliness in the world, that's the time. Generally, when these outer planets transit, it always shakes the world up in a fundamental way. We've got 4 of them happening within 6 weeks of each other, plus an eclipse. And I make that sound good for the world generally, but at an individual level, you'll probably be burnt out from all these changes happening in such a short period of time. So expect to see a lot of your family, friends, co-workers, and everyone around you walking around like zombies over that 6-week period. And then the rest of the year goes really good until that blip in energy over August, September. Then I believe 2025 is going to end in a good way too. So before ending this video, I'll pull up the screenshot of what's going to be happening in the latter years of this decade. I'm predicting some sort of financial disaster at the end of 2026, early 2027, then a new global war after that. So there are certainly storm clouds on the horizon in the latter part of this decade, but we shouldn't be panicking about that just now. The only thing I suppose you could really do to prepare for it is start to grow your own food source. This is a theme I talked about in a video series earlier in the year, in which I called the most important video series I'm ever going to make. I'll link to that video at the bottom in the description section of this video to explain why having some sort of independent food source in the coming years is going to be important. Otherwise, guys, I want to wish you guys a happy 2025 and let's make the most of it. Thanks a lot.